What's up, YouTube? Now look, I don't want to spoil Sakamoto Days, so I won't go into too many details, but in a chapter not too long ago, we got a pretty subtle but honestly a pretty direct hint that Sakamoto Days may be gearing up for its own international arc. That's all I'll say. So next you'll probably ask, what's an international arc? Okay, let's break it down like this. Mostly in shonen anime and manga, there's a power system, right? The main characters are powered by something. Let it be magic or cursed energy or quirks or whatever. The power system is usually a worldwide phenomenon, but it's centralized to Japan. What I mean is the strongest people, heroes or villains, are based in Japan, which is understandable, right? A lot of shonen anime have a predictable arc. The main character is usually someone who gets access to the power system late or gets an understanding of it late. The hero is usually an underdog, or they start out as one, either because they have a weak power or they don't fully grasp the power system yet. As the hero starts to progress in power, they go from, say, beating up a school bully to a gang member to the gang member's boss, and eventually we get to the point where they're fighting the strongest in Japan. This is usually a middle arc, closer to the end. By this point in the story, the hero is pretty powerful. They might even be one of the strongest people in the world at this point. They usually have a transformation or two, some special moves, maybe even an ultimate move they can only use every once in a while. This is where the international arc comes in. A lot of the times the main villain will flee or go into hiding after a big climatic battle, and the hero essentially just establishes themselves as one of the strongest in the world before going to fight the villain in the final arcs. I mean, I'm American, so it's pretty interesting to see what an American fighter can do with access to these power systems, but a lot of the time, these international fighters are just jobbers. At best, they give the hero a little challenge and maybe act as a stepping stone, but a lot of them get destroyed with little to no issue. Of course, by this point in the story, we're usually cruising to the end, so they don't get any character development either. I might sound mad, but really, it's fine. I mean, what do you expect? This is Japanese media, so it's not weird for Japanese characters to get all the focus. Let's think about it like this, right? Like in American comics, forget Elseworld stories or multiverse, whatever, throughout 60 plus years of history, how many heroes do we know about that are based in Japan or China or Korea? Exactly. But I still think it's interesting to examine each manga and anime's approach to introducing these foreign characters, so let's talk about the 5 instances of international arcs from worst to best. Okay, so the worst is Baki. There's no amount of prefacing or explaining I can do to soften the blow, so let's just make this quick. I love Baki. I watched the OVA and the original 2001 anime, followed that up with the Netflix anime, and I picked up the manga and read it to its current point. I think I'm about 10 chapters behind. It's really long. 30 plus years of stories, but it's really good. Like, you would think a story that's been going on for 30 plus years that focuses on less than 40 characters would get boring or old, but Baki really knows how to balance it. So yeah, this is gonna be tough. But Baki probably has the worst international arc of any anime I've watched or any manga I've read. It's not even close. Whew, okay, how do I say this? The death row convicts are boring. For all of you that watched Baki or read it, please tell me one interesting thing Sikorsky did or one interesting thing Boyle did. Compared to the larger than life and really interesting participants of the maximum tournament, the death row convicts feel almost generic. But it's not a crime to be average. No, any arc that Itagaki would have come up with after the maximum tournament, that it would have felt generic. So let's talk about the actual reason Baki is holding this spot. Let's talk about Muhammad Ali Jr. In the show, he's the son of Muhammad Ali, possibly the greatest boxer of all time. He's supremely talented. Ali Jr. is better than Ali in his prime from what we can tell. He's talented, he's a little full of himself, a little arrogant like the other characters, and he wants Baki's girl. Okay, if you're not aware, most of the fighters in Baki are seasoned masters of their craft. At their youngest, they're middle-aged. Unlike most shonen, Baki really doesn't have a rival his age. The 2 characters in the main cast that are close to his age are kind of doing their own thing. Hanayama is kind of laid back, he has the fighting spirit, but he's more interested in pushing himself. Katsumi Orochi is more interested in training to become a successor to his father. And when Muhammad Ali Jr. is introduced, we also get parallels to Muhammad Ali and Yujiro's rivalry. As an audience, we expect the same thing to develop with Ali Jr. and Baki. So you know what happens? He gets destroyed, humiliated by 3 of Baki's friends, he gets humiliated by his dad while he's still injured, and he doesn't even land a punch on Baki. His dad had to save him from Baki and stop Baki from killing him. So he lost. Bad. multiple times in a row. It's okay, it happens. At this point in the story, if everyone was fully healed and rested, he's still a top 10 character. But after he is destroyed and nearly killed by Baki, he never appears in the story, even once, ever again. As far as I know, he isn't even mentioned. In over 20 years, the talented son of the greatest boxer in the world is never seen, never heard of, never mentioned again. Why though? I mean, his character had infinite potential. You could literally do anything with his storyline. Or was Ali Jr.'s inclusion simply an easy roundabout way for Japanese fighters to beat on the greatest boxer in the world and flex their strength without repercussions? I don't know, and I don't really care. Major spoilers for JJK. Skip to this time code to skip past it. Man, JJK is one of my favorite shonen anime ever. But the so-called international arc here isn't even that bad. In my opinion, it's just a little pointless. A lot of you probably don't even remember this, but Kenjaku went to the United States with Urame and introduced cursed energy to the president and some other high-ranking officials for 2 whole chapters. 2 chapters and a crucial endgame arc was spent on this. That's kind of a lot. The military was sent in, they mostly got slaughtered by every curse they saw, they captured a couple of really low level sorcerers, and that was it. Nice. It wasn't bad. In fact, one of my favorite panels in the entire manga came out of this very small mini arc. But again, I ask, what was the ultimate point of this? For these US soldiers to serve as energy to power the merger? To remove a couple of really low level sorcerers out the culling game? I don't get it. Next is My Hero Academia. I don't like how much I've been mentioning this recently. I probably won't say this again for a really long time, but yes, My Hero Academia is one of my favorite series of all time, easily in my top 5. So it pains me to say this, but My Hero Academia's international arc was completely average. Not good, certainly not bad, but completely average. It served its purpose, it did leave you wanting more, but it didn't completely squander its potential and leave everything on the table like Baki. Okay, let's take it back. This is a world of superheroes. 80% of the population have these powers, quirks. It's global, all over the world. Answer this though, forget spin-offs or light novels or whatever. How many international heroes do we know the name of? It's about 15. And of them, how many do we have any significant information on outside of their name? It's like 4. And let me go ahead and address this. I know some of you smarter ones are gonna say, Phanta, you just said that it's fine that Japanese media only focuses on Japanese characters. So why is it an issue that My Hero doesn't touch on the United States and its hero situation? One of the biggest supporting side characters and the mentor to our main character, All Might, has a direct connection to the United States. He was a hero there. If I'm not mistaken, he debuted there, but we barely know anything about that. Was he the symbol of peace for the United States? Did he lower their crime rate? Did he work with other heroes and hero agencies in the United States? What is even the structure of heroing? We know that it's regulated, but how? Is it similar to Japan? So many questions we want to know the answers to. Let me also explain this though. As a manga author, until you reach a certain point, which Horikoshi reached this point a long time ago, but until you reach a certain point, your manga is always at risk of being cancelled. There have been some incredible, absolutely amazing manga that still ended up getting cancelled. So with a story like this, you're on a tight time schedule and you're at risk of being cancelled, there's never a good point to get into heavy exposition to explain something that's not central to the story. That's what the supplemental material, that's what spin-off manga and light novels and things like that are for. And the supplemental material we got is there and it's good, and I feel like it covered it pretty decently. But what I'm trying to say is, it just makes the world feel a little small when you say something's a worldwide phenomenon, but we don't even know how it's affecting the rest of the world. And then we got Stars and Stripe, and she was basically just a plot device. Look, don't confuse that with me saying she's a bad character. She was not. Horikoshi really has this knack, like this special talent for making you care about characters quickly. Even with a super quick backstory and a couple of dialogue exchanges, I cared somewhat about Stars and Stripe. But either way, she was the living embodiment of the question My Hero fans have been asking for a long time. Why aren't the international heroes coming to help? Well, here's your international hero. She has the strength to match Shigaraki and a quirk to cancel out his quirk, and she still got destroyed. If this hero, the strongest hero of the United States, can't do anything, what can anyone else outside Japan do? Exactly. Next is Shaman King. Most of you haven't seen it and most of you don't care about it, so I won't go into too much detail, but the international arc is actually pretty decent. Finally is Chainsaw Man. Now Chainsaw Man doesn't fit the criteria of the international arc I set out at all. If you've seen or watched the show, you know that Chainsaw Man is an unconventional shonen series, but I still want to talk about it, so let's go over it. Major spoilers ahead. Skip to this time code if you want to skip it. This obviously is a mid to end game arc for Chainsaw Man, at least part 1. This is when the curtain is fully drawn back. We got the hints and the indicators earlier in the series, but this is when everything is fully revealed and out in the open. We get a full indication of how valuable and how sought after Denji is, and we get an idea of how wicked and powerful Makima is. And we kind of get a grasp on, the strength level of the rest of the world as well. Quan Chi is actually a pretty great character, and a lot of fans don't seem to realize she's a parallel to Denji. She's basically like a guard dog that does exactly as she's told, and as long as she's with her girls, nothing else matters. She doesn't even want to know anything else. Santa Claus was an okay villain, kind of a bait and switch. Honestly, it was all a little confusing. But all in all though, this is a genuinely great arc. Honestly, one of the best arcs in Chainsaw Man, and that's really saying something. Really just one note, one thing I wanted to see, and maybe this is asking too much for a weekly shonen manga, but I did want to see the structure of the other devil hunting organizations a little bit, maybe just a few panels or a couple throwaway lines. Chainsaw Man kind of leaves a good amount to the imagination, so I'm not mad or sad or anything, but I was a little curious. So there we go. We went over and analyzed all of these international arcs, and most of them are average at best. The ones that don't suck are at best a 6 out of 10. So you might be wondering, well, what's the reason? Why do all these manga authors with different skill levels, different strengths and weaknesses, different backgrounds, they all seem to struggle with this type of arc? Okay, I can maybe go about explaining it. This is not a concrete explanation. This is really just my theory. So despite the proliferation and the spread of the internet and everything, Japan is still a pretty isolated, insular country. It's nothing like it was maybe even 15 or 20 years ago, but overall it's still pretty isolated. So a lack of understanding of different cultures may be playing a part in these lackluster international arcs. It's not a lack of effort though. A few times in this video, I've asked to see the structure of how these power systems are handled in the West, especially in the United States. It's easy to make that up for Japan. Of course, a Japanese mangaka at least somewhat knows how their government operates, so it's easy to create a believable scenario on how the introduction of cursed energy or whatever will affect the government and how things are operating. But Googling and researching can only tell you so much about another country. You're gonna have an incomplete picture. There's certain nuances and intricacies you just can't get off the internet that the average citizen of the country will have. So maybe it's better just to not do it, or to kind of keep it vague and keep it simple. To that same point, if they get it wrong, they'll alienate their foreign audiences and they'll hurt their manga. Let me explain. Going into detail on these other countries and their structures is, let's be honest, it's boring to the Japanese audiences. That's a big issue. Even though anime and manga are, I'd say, pretty popular, it's not even getting popular, it's pretty popular over here in the West, the Japanese audience are still the main consumers of this media. They're still the ones who go to the movies, and they're still the ones who buy the most merch, so everything is geared to them. Imagine, if you will, we were watching an Avengers film or something like that, and right in the middle of a big fight or the setup to a big fight, it cut to a 15-minute long uninterrupted lecture about how superheroes affected Korea. The story doesn't have anything to do with Korea or anything like that, it just wanted to explain that. Some of us would find that interesting, but the general audience would probably walk out before the scene was halfway over. It's low risk, low reward, and if you're not as established, that mini arc you spend explaining the structure or systems of a foreign country, it could probably end with your manga getting axed. So that was my analysis of international arcs in anime and manga. If you got to this point, tell me your favorite international arc in the comments. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, click on the bell to get notifications when I upload next, and make sure to vote on the polls. They decide the next video I'm gonna do. Thanks to everyone who voted in the last poll for the international arcs video. The next poll should be dropping right now alongside this video, so make sure to check the community tab. Thank you everyone for watching, and watch more anime.